taught his disciples, saying, "You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt has become tasteless, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything, except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by the crowd. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, so that it gives light to all who are in the home. So let your light shine before others in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven." My sisters and brothers, the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Jesus was in the temple in Jerusalem. It was in December, and he was there to celebrate the feast of the dedication of the temple. You might recall its name as being the Feast of Hanukkah. Jesus didn't celebrate Christmas. He was a devout Jew, and he celebrated Hanukkah. So there was no Santa Claus for him. And during the Feast of the Dedication of the Temple, with great pomp and circumstance, they would light the huge menorah that was in the courtyard of the temple, once for 7 and then 8 days. And it was during this time, as they were lighting these huge menorah, like a torch of light, that we are told that Jesus raised his voice and said to the crowds, "I am the light of the world." Now, if someone were to do that today, we would think that person was crazy. Well, if you did it in the first century, you would have thought the same thing. So people didn't know what to make of Jesus of Nazareth. In John's Gospel, in the beginning of his Gospel, he introduces his account of the person of Jesus by saying that in him, that is Jesus, was life. And that life is the light of the whole human race. Not only that, but John goes on to say that this light shone forth, blazed forth in the darkness, and the darkness fled from the presence of the light. The darkness could not overcome the light. This is very powerful imagery that is used to describe the power of the person of Jesus and the impact he had on those around him. And when we speak of spiritual things or heavenly things, we cannot speak about these things directly because the things of the Spirit are beyond human comprehension. And so teachers, beginning with Jesus and the prophets and others, will speak of these mysteries by way of analogy. And so the symbol of light and the symbol of darkness are trying to express these mysterious realities that are at work within the human heart and within human consciousness. And so the image of light is used to describe Jesus, who is the Lord of life itself. And darkness, in the biblical sense, is used to describe the oppression of death, the tyranny of death. And so we see that human existence is a constant struggle between the light and the darkness. I am speaking by way of analogy. People in the ancient world recognized that human life within the human community is often troubled and often unjust and filled with all kinds of suffering. And oftentimes, the ancient peoples would refer to these kinds of negative things that haunt human existence as being an unclean spirit. And in other words, a spirit that's not kosher. And I'm afraid to say that in the last several years, in our society, within America, perhaps it's true throughout the world, there has been unleashed among us an unclean spirit. It's a spirit of darkness. It's a spirit that is characterized by fear, hostility, and hatred. And these feelings, these emotions, are expressed in just the plain kind of meanness that exists in our discourse as Americans within our society. It is quite unprecedented. And I'm 61 years of age, so I do have a little bit of a memory of decades past. And I don't want to sound like those who say that there was a better world a few decades back and we're only getting worse. I don't want to say that, because every generation has had to struggle with the evil and darkness that exists in their own time. But I do think that we need to recognize that there is an unclean spirit within our society that needs to be dispersed. It needs to be exorcised or cast out. And the only thing that can do that is that which is the light of the world. Only the light can overcome darkness. Darkness cannot overcome darkness. Only the light of love can overcome the darkness of hate. Only the light of justice can overcome the darkness of injustice. And so we are called, my brothers and sisters, to participate in the light of Christ. For in the gospel today, Jesus makes reference to this image, but he doesn't apply it to himself. He applies it to those who are listening to him, or those who have ears to hear. And if you have ears to hear, and you are listening to the voice of Jesus, this is his word to you today. You are the light of the world. You, the disciple, are the light of the world. You see, the light of Christ shined rather brightly 2,000 years ago in that faraway place on the other side of the earth called Israel, in the far corner of the Roman Empire. He did extraordinary things, and people by the tens of thousands were drawn to him because he radiated the light of grace, truth, and love. To the Jews, he became the way and the truth and the life. And to the Greeks, he became the good, the true, and the beautiful. That is the light of Christ. But then Jesus, through his passion and his crucifixion, his death and burial and resurrection, and his ascension and exaltation into heaven, has been visibly removed from the earth as a particular person living in space and time, Jesus of Nazareth. And yet he says to us who can hear his voice, I am with you always, even unto the end of the ages. The light of Christ still shines in this world of darkness. It shines ever brightly. But it can only shine brightly insofar as it shines forth and illumines our own hearts. You are the light of the world. So we know how Jesus was the light of the world for his own time. The great works of compassion and his great works of deliverance and the miraculous power he had over the unclean spirits of his own time. We know about that. But how is it that we today, in this modern world, be the light of the world as Jesus identifies us as being? The light of Christ shines forth in the world insofar that it shines forth from our lives. But what does that look like? My brothers and sisters, when we engage in the never-ending struggle for justice, we are being the light of the world. When we are working and endeavoring to create a beloved community where all are welcome, that is inclusive of every human being that has ever lived, and recognizing the dignity of every human person as bearing within their very consciousness the image of God, we are being the light of the world. When we reach out to help those who are less fortunate than ourselves, when we minister and give to the poor, we are being the light of the world. When we break and divide our bread to share with one who has no bread, we are being the light of the world. When we struggle against oppression and tyranny, we are being the light of the world. When we are clothing the naked, giving shelter to the homeless, we are being the light of the world. That is how the light of Christ shines forth in the darkness. And we are called, as the apostle wrote in one of his epistles, we are called to be children of the day and people of the light. This is the appropriate activity for those of us who have been given the light of faith, because your faith, no matter how great or small it is a gift from God. You didn't conjure it up on your own. And through faith, Christ now manifests his light in you, so that you become a light unto the world of darkness. It's extraordinary, isn't it? That's a high calling. Who can achieve that? And yet, that is our calling. And we gather together on the first day of the week. And as I look out upon our community, and I see you sitting there right now, I'm looking at each of you. It does my heart so good when I see you here in church. And it is a blessing to me. And I can see that you're the faithful remnant, because here it is, Super Bowl Sunday, and you are found time to be in church today. That's good. That's good. And the reason we come together is because we are called to be a community of light. We enlighten one another. We lift ourselves up. We encourage and build ourselves up in the faith of Jesus, so that the light will shine ever more brightly from our lives as we go out into the world. Jesus said to his disciples, "You are the salt of the earth." Now, when I first read that, or heard that being read when I was a child, I thought that was very strange. Because what value is salt? I associated salt with something that sat in a little container on our kitchen table. You know, no big deal. Salt was about as common as anything. But in the ancient world, salt was one of the most valuable of commodities. Did you know that? It was important because it was used as a preservative for food. It was used in all sorts of ways. In fact, salt was so valued that the imperial army of Rome would often pay their soldiers in salt. That's where you get the expression, he's not worth his salt. You know, he's not fulfilling or living up to what he's getting paid to do. So salt was something of great value and usefulness in the ancient world. And Jesus says, you, as the beloved community of the light, are salt for the earth. You are like a preservative for civilization. You are something that gives flavor and makes life enjoyable and valuable. We are called, my brothers and sisters, to be salt for the earth, light to the world. But it is necessary that once in a while we gather together as a community so that we can renew that light. And we are called to be together in community, to worship together and to come to the table of Jesus so that we may become truly savory in our saltiness so that we can do the work of Jesus in the world. That's what it means to be a disciple. And when you come to church on Sunday morning, you are making a declaration to all of us. You are saying that and affirming that you too participate in the light of Christ. And you too recognize that you need this hour, okay, an hour and 20 minutes, to be renewed and to be basking in the eternal light of Christ so that we may take this out into the world. And so we're challenged in today's world to bring the light of Christ's mercy, grace, and love to those who desperately need it, and to cast out the unclean spirit of hatred, bigotry, and prejudice, and just plain meanness out of our discourse as members of this society, so that truly America and the world can be that city shining on a hill. And that, my brothers and sisters, is the gospel of the Lord. Amen. Let us stand together now and profess our faith.